Today we're going to talk about how you can get a 3000 plus score in the Ucat. Every year on my elite coaching program, quite a lot of students come through with a 3000 plus score. I'm usually really interested in the ones who come to me after having a year prior to joining FutureDoc who didn't do so well in the Ucat. Some people getting a 2400, 2600, and then when they join us, what did they do differently in that time that they were with us to go from those scores to get a 3000 plus score? So what you're about to see is a talk that we gave a couple of weeks ago where my ex-students from last year who got over 3000 in the Ucat tell you exactly what they did to get just that score. In the video, you will see that some of the tutors will refer to the kind of highest yield resources that they use to help them get a 3000 plus score. So what I'm going to do as a gift, because it's high Ucat season, is give you a few days of free access to my course. And if you want to get that, you can find out how by looking in the link below in the description and seeing where you can sign up to get that for just a couple of days. That access should be enough to at least help you understand some of the fundamentals that you can apply to your own Ucat practice and help you improve your score. So let's not delay any longer. Let's dive in with the talk and you can find out how my students last year got a 3000 plus score in their Ucat. Enjoy. Generally, people are feeling a little bit scared about the Ucat, not so confident, and they do realize that with the right preparation, we can get to that sort of level that we want. So what we'll do now is I'm going to hand over. So basically, we'll talk a little bit about why the Ucat is important. And basically, the Ucat is important because for lots of people, for lots of universities, it is the main selector, if not a big selector, of whether they decide to give you an offer to their university. So they have, especially at the moment with GCSEs, a lot of people didn't actually sit their GCSEs, or exams have been a bit difficult in the last couple of years. They don't have much to compare people to. And a lot of universities will have just a sheer cutoff point that below which they won't even look at certain applications. So the universities actually, coincidentally, both Daisy and Josh got into Newcastle University, that is their policy. They have quite a high cutoff actually for who they will look at. And below that, they literally don't even bother reading their applications. So for that, it's really important to meet that threshold. And then actually, funnily enough, once you get to that threshold, it becomes a lot easier actually, because you've eliminated so many people. All you need to do is do well at the interview, which, like I say, on our program, we train people to do really well at the interview once they've got it. So once they get to that stage, the destiny is there in their own hands, and that makes it way more favorable. And that's one of the reasons why we do so well at FutureDoc, because we help people in that sense. So yeah, Ucat is really important. And obviously most of the universities, out of the 44 universities, 36 of them require Ucat. So if you didn't know, we have a YouTube channel, like I was talking about earlier, where we did a mock test. I recommend doing a mock test at this stage, just for a barometer of where you are. I'm going to release the mock test on the YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the chat now, where you can have a go, kind of almost, it's the study with me, test with me kind of video. It's about 5 hours long, and we'll go through the test and then we'll go through all the answers in detail. So it's a long one, so be prepared. Yeah, that's one way to get involved and get some more free resources. But I think for now, I'll talk about my 3-stage plan for doing well later. But for now, I'm going to hand over to one of our students. So like I said, we at FutureDoc, we've had a lot of students who've come to us who either are doing it for the first time or have very high requirements, or just come and want to do the best they can. But even people, like I say, who've come in years prior and not got the results that they wanted, they have then gone on, going through our program, have got really good scores. So I want to talk to you. What I've found really interesting is that there are definite patterns amongst the people who get a 3000 plus score. And I'm always fascinated in kind of studying what they've done differently to do so well, and get their honest feedback and their tactics for what they did that separated them from the rest. So like I say, we have 2 students today two of many of the students on the FutureDoc program that got 3,000 plus, and they're going to give a little bit of insight into how they did it and what they did differently. So the first one is an undergrad applicant. So Daisy, I won't say too much, but basically she got into Newcastle, as I said, one of the highest Ucat requirement unis, one of the most demanding universities in terms of the Ucat. So I'll unshare my screen and I'm going to hand over to Daisy to give her talk about what she did to help her get a 3,000 plus score.
Thanks. So I'm Daisy, I'm in year 13 and I sat my Ucat last year, obviously. I got 3,010. And I just want to say before I even start, for anyone who's put in the chat that they are worried and that they're really not feeling confident, when I first started, I sat a mock test. I think I did it on the Ucat website, and I got 2,230 or something like that. So within the space of like 5 weeks, you can definitely, or however long you've got, you can definitely improve, because I'm a perfect example of that. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about my top tips and how I got what I got. So before I start, how long is everyone, you can type in the chat or you can say, how long is everyone thinking of giving themselves for Ucat revision, like your intense proper mock tests, your intense questions? How long is everyone thinking of giving themselves? Okay, yeah, there's definitely some mixed results. I've sort of seen 3 weeks up to 1 or 2 months, but yeah, okay. I mean, what I will say is it's different for everyone. I gave myself about 5 or 6 weeks, but I think that for those people who are saying very long, I'd just be careful to avoid like burnout. And if you're given 3 weeks, that's absolutely fine. If you think that that's what you need, I needed a little bit longer. Some people may need even longer than me, and that's absolutely fine. So yeah, just beware. I'd recommend now, as Dr. Ashley said, do a mock test. I recommend doing one on the Ucat website. I'd say they're the best just to start with. I'd say they're very representative, but also be wary. The Ucat tests on the practice actual website, they're quite difficult. So don't get yourself down if you don't do as well as you hope on that, but just do one as a baseline. So I'm going to sort of move on to my top tips on each section. I'll go through it bit by bit. So I'll start with verbal reasoning, because that's the first one that we all sit. Actually, before I start, just put in the chat, what's everyone's least favorite section? What do you find the hardest at the moment? Yeah, verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning seems to be coming up. Yeah. Okay, yeah, some decision making, some abstract, yeah. Okay, so yeah, mix. Yeah, fair enough. I found abstract reasoning hardest, and when I talk about that, I'll talk about that, but it ended up being the highest one that I got. So verbal reasoning, I got a score of 700, and my top tips for this, quite simply, I mean, some people prefer doing it differently. I prefer to skim read the passage. For me, I prefer to get like a grasp of what the passage is about. If it's quite a long passage, you have to get really quick at skim reading. So I recommend start now reading the newspaper, reading magazines, getting used to reading things really quickly. See how much you can take in, because if you started doing questions, you'll know that it's really tougher time. So I recommend I skim read the passage first, and then I went to the question. But some people prefer to read the question. If you do prefer to read the question, I recommend obviously reading it and then picking out the keywords in the question. And then once you've picked out the keywords, there's normally like a star word, you can kind of see that's what they're talking about, that's what they want. Go back to the passage, read the passage, try and pick out where the keywords are. If you do that, read the line above it, read the line in which it contains, and then read the line below it. Just read sort of around it, because that will really help you to get a kind of grasp if that is what they want. They're often trying to trick you out. Please be wary of that. They're known for that. So yeah, sort of moving on for decision making. So I got 700 in that. My biggest top tip for this, and I know a lot of people don't do it and think that they can do it in their head. Don't do it in your head. Use your whiteboard. You'd be surprised by the amount of mistakes you make which I started doing when I didn't have a whiteboard at hand. If not, if you don't have a whiteboard, just use a piece of paper. Use any scrap piece of paper that you've got. You're going to need it. A lot of the questions require you, and you don't even realize they require you to draw like Venn diagrams, or they require you to draw some kind of diagram or pick out or make links between certain things, and you've got to you have to utilize that whiteboard. I seem to remember the decision making when I actually sat the exam. I didn't find it as tough for time, but then by the end of it, I realized that actually, yeah, it is quite tough for time, and I had to hurry up. With decision making, sometimes you're going to find that you don't understand it, you just can't get it, it's too difficult. If that is the case, make an educated guess. Try and think logically, flag it and move on. If you have time at the end, go back. If not, don't worry, you've guessed it, you haven't left it. So quantitative reasoning, I got a score of 740, I think I got, and at the time I think it was probably one of the hardest sections. It's one of those ones where some questions are absolutely impossible to work out in the time that you're given. It's so time pressured, as you all know, this exam is so time pressured. So I recommend for a lot of the questions in quantitative reasoning, if you don't get them within 10-20 seconds, if you can't pick out what you have to do, flag it, make an educated guess and go. Good thing is with quantitative reasoning, with a lot of these questions, you can just rule out certain answers. If something is obviously not right, then sometimes you can just rule them out. If not, because obviously sometimes, as we know, the Ucat doesn't make sense in some questions, and they want you to think that you can rule out someone. So obviously be mindful that sometimes the answers that you get might not seem right, but you know, if that's what you get, put it down, go, flag it at the end. That's all you can do. So for me, I'd say when I was sitting the exam, quantitative reasoning was probably the hardest one that I did. But you know, I still got a good score. So obviously have hope in yourself. When I started my revision, I think I came out with an average of 400 in the quantitative reasoning section. So for me, I'd say one of the biggest things to do, to be honest, this is for every section, is just practice. I think practice makes perfect. As like anything, if you're going to learn how to drive, you can't take your test after driving once. You know, you've got to practice, you've got to do it a lot. So quantitative reasoning, I say it's one of those ones, practice a lot. So for abstract reasoning.
So to interrupt, Daisy, I think actually as well, the thing that you could take courage with is that quantitative and abstract are the two that people tend to improve the most on, because you know, maths is essentially a language, isn't it? And the more you practice it, as Daisy says, the more you practice, the more fluent you get at it, and the quicker you can do it. What people, the biggest mistake people make is to fail to understand that the Ucat is primarily about speed and obviously accuracy at the same time. But the main reason that people don't get the grade that they want is because they don't complete the exam. So you can get, what's the stat I usually give? You can get, well, basically, if you get 80% of 100, what's the word? So if you get 80% of 70% of the exam, then you're going to get a worse score than if you get 80% of 100, right? And even if it's a slightly lower score, lower percent of the whole 100% of the test, you'll do a lot better than if you're just kind of doing 70% complete and you're a lot more like, let's say, for example, you got everything right and took the time and only completed 70% of the test. Well, that'll give you 70%. If you got 80% right and did all of it, so 80% of all of it would give you obviously 80%. So that's the thing that people seem to miss a lot. It's just getting through it at speed is so important. And also abstract reasoning, that's the one where people show the most improvement, because it's all about techniques. If you learn the right techniques and do them quickly, that is a really good way to pattern recognize and improve very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I mean, I don't know if you can tell as I speak, I get quite quick. You kind of get used to being a really quick person for this exam. So, you know, with everything, like I said earlier, with verbal reasoning, get used to reading a newspaper really quick. It will really help you. I recommend as I talk for every section, I really recommend just starting with timing. Don't start by doing it at your own pace. Maybe if you're really at the beginning of your revision, maybe start without timing, just to get like a grasp of each kind of section. Like as you look at abstract reasoning at the very beginning of your revision, you'll look at it and you think, what is that? So maybe give yourself a few tries without timing. But I do recommend just starting with timing, because you'll really see it really hit you in the face on how quick you have to be with each section. So yeah, for quantitative reason, as Dr. Ashley said, I really improved in it. So it is definitely possible. If it's your worst section, it was one of my worst as well. So don't worry. It seems to be the one that everyone hates as well. So moving on to abstract reasoning, I also definitely hated this one the most. I think that this was my lowest section, but it ended up being my highest. I think I got 840 or 870. I can't actually remember, but regardless, it's definitely one of those ones where you can improve. The timing on this, I know it looks horrible. It's the one where you look at it and you think, how can I do all that in such a short amount of time? But do take into consideration that once you get the pattern, you can click so quickly and you can just see it. So I'd really take the time per section. I'd give yourself maybe 20-30 seconds to try and work out the pattern. So for me, the biggest thing that I did in this section, and I really, really recommend it, only do this if you have the time. If you're giving yourself 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, if you've got it in 3 weeks time, or if you're really one of the earlier ones, maybe if you can do it quick. So for me, I did a few pages of every pattern that I see, because you'll get used to seeing these patterns. Once you spotted them, you'll think, oh, right, okay. And you tend to find that the Ucat is kind of repetitive. So a lot of the patterns, once you've seen them once, you'll see a similar thing before. They might change it. So if it's in the left corner, when you practice, maybe it will be in like the right corner, but the way that they do it is kind of the same. It's a lot of repeating. So for abstract reasoning, I recommend doing loads and loads of questions. I think that's the biggest thing that I recommend. And if you have the time, do the pages. I really wish I had the pages on me, but I gave them to a friend. They're just scruffy. You don't have to do them. You don't have to do them all neat. Just really scruffy on the patterns that you note down. So you say, okay, so for this one, the pattern is top left. There's always a black circle, and you'll see that. And then maybe when you do it again, there'll be a white circle in the right corner in a different one. You think, oh, okay, I've seen kind of that before. There is a mnemonic, and I can't remember what it is. Dr. Ashley might have it on all the different patterns that you tend to see. So
got an idea.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't remember it, but yeah. So I recommend using one of them when you're practicing. Only when you're practicing. When you're actually like doing proper mock tests, don't look at the mnemonic. But when you're sort of trying to work out what they are at the beginning, yeah, I recommend this mnemonic when Dr. Ashley gets it up. So moving on to situational judgment, I got band 2. I think I got band 2. This is one of the ones that people actually normally really love, because I don't remember. Josh says otherwise. I seem to remember it being really it's sort of at the end, and you're sort of finishing, you're so close to the end, and you're sitting there, and it's not too time pressured, so you think, oh, this is lovely. But it often does catch you out. I mean, it obviously caught me out to an extent. I got band 2, but it can catch you out. You always have to remember, my biggest top tip for this is do what you should do, not what you would do. And I know everyone will say it to you, and every top tip you'll see, every YouTube video you'll see, they'll say do what you should, not what you would do. And I can't stress that enough, because I think in a situation, what you would do is not necessarily what you should do. So for this, I recommend reading the Good Medical Council Guidance, or Good Doctor, I can't remember the exact name of it, but
the GMC Good Practice Guidance.
GMC Good, yeah.
Very important document to read as you're applying to medical school generally anyway, and as a doctor.
Yeah, you'll need it for your interviews as well. So I think if you start reading it now, that's brilliant. And I think most of what you find in the situational judgment, or no, everything that you find in the situational judgment is based off of this document. So I think if you know it and you can kind of decipher what they kind of want from you, then the situational judgments. So someone else in there could, yeah.
I'll pop it in the chat, don't worry.
Yeah. So yeah, I really recommend reading that document and kind of just digesting what they want from you, because, well, obviously, as I said, what you should do is not what you would do in certain situations, and always remember that. Some of them are completely obvious. Some of them saying, like, say if a drunk person walked in and what do you do? A drunk doctor, and you can very clearly see that he's drunk. Would you do nothing? Well, obviously not. Some are quite obvious. Some are quite difficult to sort of pick out. You have sort of definitely, most definitely, or I can't remember the exact thing of how it goes, but it's kind of difficult.
So it's important, very important, not important at all, of minor importance, and then the other one is very appropriate, appropriate, not appropriate, or very inappropriate.
Yeah. So some of them are quite difficult to pick out. Where do you pick out most appropriate and appropriate, or but I think as you do, as I said, for every other section, as you do more, you will start to see that again, it's a repeating pattern. It's just about patterns and quickness of these kind of things. And you'll start to see that what they want it is kind of repeating all the time. And you'll tend to pick out, once you go through your answers, you'll see, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't as appropriate. There is a new type of question they've introduced.
So yeah, and when it comes to the appropriateness and inappropriateness sort of thing, or the importance or non-importance, there's a kind of a quick, it's very quick. Obviously, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. But there's a quick filtering method that I teach on the course of like how to go. So how to decide between the top and bottom. And then once you're either in the top half section or the bottom half section. Then once you're in that, which of the two is it? Is it the very top one or the second one? Or is it the very bottom one or the second from bottom? So yeah, a really effective way to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I just found the chat. Is there a new type of situational judgment question? I mean, I have no idea. I know it has changed this year.
There have been a couple of changes. I'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, okay. So there, I'd say that's my main situational judgment tips. So sort of my generic sort of tips. I saw also someone reminded me, I saw on the chat, is Medify, I think it was, is Medify realistic? Yes, I would say that Medify, out of all of the ones, I'd say Medify is probably the most realistic one. I used Medify. I think there's about 40 mocks or something on there. I did them all. I really recommend doing them. Some you'll find are more realistic. You'll find there's fluctuations in the different mocks. Some are easier, some are really difficult. But I'd say in terms of how it looks, like screen wise, and how the calculator plays out, yeah, it's the same. Oh, I forgot to say, with the calculator, don't use an at-home calculator. Don't use a handheld one. Get used to the one on the computer, because it's a real pain to use, and you'll tend to find that it does take up time. So you'll want to get used to sort of knowing times tables, knowing like fractions really quickly. You don't want to have to start using a calculator on there. Also, you'll find it on YouTube. It's like how to use all your buttons on a calculator, buttons on a laptop keyboard really quickly, and that will help you, rather than having to type out or work it out on a whiteboard. I mean, obviously you can use your whiteboard, but you want to get quick at these things. So I recommend Medify, definitely. I think there's still 4 Ucat mock tests on the actual Ucat website. I recommend that you do one of them early. So do one of them as your sort of base mocks. You do one halfway through your revision, and then you do about 2 towards the end. I seem to remember there's one of them which is really difficult. So don't worry too much if your score drops, but you will find that there's obviously, as I said, there's fluctuations. But I'd recommend, because obviously they're quite, there's not a lot of them, their resources are quite scarce. I recommend leaving them sort of till the end. So I just saw, how many questions did I do roughly in total? I couldn't give a number. I did a lot.
Sorry, Daisy, I just looked this up because I saw the question in the chat. So Medify has over 20,000 Ucat questions, and I think, like Daisy, I did probably 19,000 of those questions over time I wrote.
I think that what you tend to pick out from the good candidates to the weaker candidates is how many questions they do. You can be really smart at maths, or you can be really good at English, but that doesn't mean you'll be really good at these sections. I think the practice is what made us get the scores that we get. Getting 3,000 plus is obviously very difficult. So I really recommend questions, quite loads of questions. So sort of in my timeline, as some people have said that they've given themselves like 6 weeks, some people have given themselves 4, however long you want to do it. I recommend, or I did 5 weeks, so that was enough for me. So sort of you start off sort of doing like your more relaxed revision the first couple of weeks, and then you sort of ramp it up 2 weeks. 2 weeks before, I gave myself 2 weeks of really intense revision. One of my best tips is, depending on the time that you're going to sit your exam, I recommend you do a mock at that time every day. It's surprising how quick your body clock can get used to being most active at that time. So I sat my exam at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So every day at 2 o'clock, I'd sit a mock. It gets you used to it. Your body will be most active during that time. So for me, normally I'm quite a night person. I revise quite well at night, but I really think even just for these 5 weeks, really try and change that, try and sit them at the time. Anyway, so sort of 3 weeks before, I recommend doing a mock, at least a mock a day. I think by the end of it, I was definitely doing 2 mocks a day, I know you get tired, but I think if you can do 2 mocks a day, you can definitely do 1 exam and not feel the tiredness. It's all about not getting yourself worn out by the end. But I think if that's too much for you, then just at least do a mock a day, and then maybe afterwards, obviously spend as much time as you can going through it. It's essential that you don't just sit the exam, but you review the exam. I think that you can do as many questions as you like, but if you don't learn from them, you're never going to get any better. So always make sure you go through them, especially for ones like abstract reasoning. You'll be surprised what you miss out, and you just, as I did, write them down. Easy. So about a week before, that's when I was doing the most revision that I could. I was making sure that I wasn't getting tired doing a mock. I was reviewing my mocks. One thing that I just want to say before I wrap up is that the day before your exam, I really recommend not doing a mock. Don't do a mock, because you don't want to get a bad score and it sends you down a spiral that you're not going to be able to get a really good score. Because a couple of days before, I made the mistake of doing a mock and I got about 2,500, 2,600, which was absolutely fine if you get that. It's just that I was getting higher throughout my sort of my peak, and you're going to think, oh no, I've dropped now, I'm no longer at my peak. But please don't panic, please don't worry if you drop just those couple of days before. You might just be tired, you might just want it over. So don't worry yourself. The day before, do some mock questions. You want to keep your mind in it. You don't want to lose that kind of pace. But I just recommend mock questions the day before, and also on the day. I know that I think that mostly everyone would have booked theirs in by now, but I rather book mine in for the afternoons. It gives me kind of the morning to wake up and to do a few mock questions. But if you're someone that's going to worry about this, I recommend doing it in the morning, that kind of thing. But I think Dr. Ashley would have spoken about that before. You would have booked it with that in mind. But yeah, so that's basically everything I wanted to say. I know there'll be like questions at the end, but I'm assuming that we will let Josh go first. And then
sorry, I have one question.
We'll save questions. We'll save questions for the end. I'll talk you through what we're going to do. Just so hang on to those questions. Just quickly though, one that I saw in the chat by Holly, Daisy and Josh. How did you use your tutor for the kind of to make the most out of it for the UCAT? How did you utilize that session? Or those sessions?
I don't mind going first. So I'm assuming you're talking about, like, I had Kenji, that's what you're talking about. Yeah. So before each session, sort of ramping up to the UCAT, I'd pick out what I was worst at. So quite a few of the times I seem to remember going over abstract reasoning with my tutor. You could ask him to pick out a few questions and to walk through them with you. That's what I did. Or the first time that I spoke to my tutor about the UCAT, I just asked him to give him top tips. A lot of my top tips have come from the greats. My tutor gave me amazing top tips. I definitely asked them how they got what they got. And I recommend going through questions with them. Yeah.
Josh, what did you do?
Much the same, really. My subjects, I found certain sections much harder than others, and fortunately, my tutor Charlie, who was beyond amazing and supportive, really helped just going through questions that I just didn't understand, I couldn't grasp. So I'd go in with loaded questions and ask, how would you work through this? It was a bit unusual. Charlie had done the GAMSAT, not the Ucat, but she has loads of colleagues and friends and other students that assisted her in guiding her, like both of us, through these questions and things, which was really useful. But it was also because you're going to be doing a lot of things in a very short period of time. You're not just going to be focused on the UK. You've got other obligations and things, and managing your time was quite difficult. And obviously, I'm a mature student, so I had quite a lot going on as well. But for me to talk through someone who's been through it and who knows how best to utilize my time and when to do things, when to ease off the throttle, all these quality of life things that make preparing for the exam much easier. I mean, these are my tutor is someone who's going through med school, and however stressed you feel doing the UCAT, pretty sure you'll be more stressed at med school. And she knows exactly how to manage her time and when to do things, how best to do things, what's a good way of revising for certain subjects and things. And she's just a fountain of knowledge. Everything that I'm going to go through is condensed from talks and webinars and stuff like that from the FutureDoc program. And not just my tutor, but all the tutors that I've spoken to, because I went to an interview day and things. They're all there for a reason. They're all experts, and just asking small questions that make a big difference. So is there a little tip that you've got to get a few milliseconds in abstract reasoning, anything like that? They've got an answer, and just use them, would be my advice. Just ask them anything and they will almost always have a good answer for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. So Josh, I'll come over to Josh in a minute. I just thought I'd break up the bit between both people chatting by just kind of giving you a little bit more of kind of maybe a bit of advice. I'm trying to share my screen, but it's not working for some reason. Hold on, just bear with me. Zoom's been very temperamental lately. Why is it not letting me share? Okay, hold on, just bear with me a second. There we go. Good. So Daisy touched on something really important. Keeping yourself really relaxed and just very chill for the time that you're doing the exam is going to be really important, really conducive to you being in the right sort of state that is going to make you perform well. The UCAT is unlike, so most of you have, your experience of doing exams is you go away, you learn a curriculum, and then you get asked about that. You're essentially just trying to regurgitate the curriculum. This is more like a performance. It's like, I mean, for the abstract reasoning, for example, it's a bit like being asked to perform an IQ test under pressure. Similar, that's more akin to what the UCAT is like than exams that you'll have previously experienced, such as your GCSEs or your A-levels or whatever that might be. So they're there to test how you cope and your mental abilities under pressure. So I would recommend this 3-stage plan. So I'll give the link to my to my YouTube channel, because I do actually talk about this 3-stage plan. I'll show you. In fact, let me just show you this is the thumbnail to look out for, the 3-step plan for a 3,000 plus UCAT score. And actually, there are loads of condensed versions of my course on there, which will give you, a decent amount of advice, but it's, as much as I can fit into a 7 to 10 minute video. So I'll talk about other resources that we can use in a bit. Would you buy any books? Is a question in the chat. I would say it's an online program. It's an online test. It feels different online to how it does in the real thing in a book. Sorry, the real thing feels different to how it does in a book. So it's a bit difficult. So I'll just go through this and then I'll tackle any questions in a second. But I've just posted again the link to my YouTube channel, where you'll get even the people who are on the FutureDoc program who are here today. I'd recommend using those as a quick summary of obviously just to condense a lot of the detail, and then go to the course if you have any bits that you want to go into more depth in and really hone those skills to improve. But it's good as a kind of baseline for where to go and where to direct you on the course to get those really good techniques that are going to help speed you up. But so talking about the 3-stage plan. So the first thing is familiarization. Now, you just need to understand all the types of questions that come up. So you need to know how to tackle everything in the most efficient manner. So like I say, my YouTube videos do that. My online course does that. And then for those of you who are on the elite program or the academy program, the deep dives are super important. You know, those official talks where we get someone externally from Ucat to come in and give you that, like, you know, the gold as to how to do really well. Review those sessions for those of you who have access to them. Make sure that you understand in detail what they're only a certain type of question that comes up, and they will just give me a minute. I'll come to questions at the end of the session. Okay. So yeah, it's really important that you understand the detail of the questions that are available and how the best technique for each of those. So those deep dives in the course will really go into detail with that. And it's that kind of thing of slow down to speed up. First, learn the techniques really well, get your technique really solid, and that's when we crank up the intensity. So stages 1 and 2 are all about learning what the material is, or what the kind of questions are going to be. Then we want to do practice questions. So practice questions are untimed at the start, and what you want to aim for is getting about 80% correct. And then, and only then, do you increase or time yourself and slowly increase the pace. Because essentially what we want to do is get ourselves to a baseline where we're getting answers correct 80% of the time, so we know what we're doing, and we kind of, you know, getting good consistency with our question answering. And then we crank up the intensity, i.e. the pace. Because if you're getting 80% correct and then you increase the speed a little bit, and at first you'll probably feel like, oh, actually I'm not getting as good a mark as I was when I was untimed. But then eventually you'll get used to it, and you'll be used to that pace, and you'll maintain that 80%. And then you crank it up again. And at first you'll have a bit of a blip, and then eventually you'll get used to the pace, and you'll kind of maintain that level. And 80% is a really good score. 80% will land you in band 1. So yeah, don't worry too much about kind of, it will be this kind of up and down, but the general trend will be going up and to the right. So that's the important thing. And then, yeah, like Daisy said, time practice towards the end, mocks, high intensity, and just getting used to delivering that performance. Because so we've talked about that video. It is like sprint training. When people train for sprinting, what you don't do is sprint non-stop 5 hours for, you know, from 9 till, or that'd be 3 o'clock, so 2 o'clock, just consistently sprinting non-stop. You can imagine how the pace of your sprint would pretty much be diminished quite quickly. What sprinters do when they train is they do a sprint and they'll take a really long break until they're almost fully recovered, and then they'll go again. And that's how you can maintain your pace. Because the converse, and what people do, is they just absolutely burn themselves out. And I'll get loads of people saying to me, you know, I'm putting in 5-hour shifts and my score's getting worse. Well, of course, because it's about you being mentally agile and mentally quick. Like I say, accuracy is obviously important as well, but it's about the speed at which you do that processing. So naturally, after 5 hours, your brain is going to be knackered and you need that break. So like Daisy said, if you can do 2 sessions in a day of mocks in the run up to it, that will put you in good stead. But equally importantly, like she said, is if you do a mock, it's important to go through that mock to not only understand what you've got wrong, but what you've got right as well, so that you can keep doubling down on the things that are working, as well as have your blind spots or your areas of weakness highlighted, so that you can continue to improve and improve your score. So Let me just see what other slides I've got here. Just to break the session up, we'll just do a quick breakout room. So let's I'll post these questions in the chat, but we're going to just do groups of 4, and so there's, what is there, 100 of us, so we'll do 25 breakout rooms. Just quickly, just tell people what you're worried about, what things you found most useful, and what you think your next step is to improve. So someone keep time. We'll do 1:30 each, just so that people can share some tips and resources and things that they've found useful, because that just is a nice way to break up the session a little bit. So we'll do groups of 4, so 25 breakout rooms. We'll assign everybody automatically. Okay, great. So yes, somebody keep time. Josh and Daisy, feel free to jump in and have a chat to make some friends if you want. I'll probably do the same, and I'll time you, and I'll keep everything running smoothly. Okay. Yeah. So
this meeting is being recorded.
Oh, there we go. So the question was about kind of, do I have enough time with about 6 weeks to go? And I think it's not a simple yes or no answer is the truth, because what will to get a 3,000 plus score, which is what Arthur was saying for getting into King's College, which is accurate. You will you will need to, different people will need a different level of intensity for their preparation. So it's important to know how you're progressing and keep a bit of a kind of feedback loop for yourself by doing mocks, by doing questions, by getting an idea of how well you're doing, as to how likely it is that you're going to achieve that in 6 weeks' time. Now, I think with 6 weeks of intense practice, and by doing it properly, as in the way that we talked about, yes, you can do it in 6 weeks. But if it gets to and remember that you'll have a big improvement in the last couple of weeks in the run up to it, because you'll be doing a lot of marks, you'll be really getting into it, and that is when you'll see a lot of improvement. But at the same time, you have to be a bit agile to if it's a week out and you think, what, actually I don't think I'm going to get it, you get one stab at the Ucat. You get, it's that 2-hour period, and that score sticks with you for the application cycle. You cannot repeat it in that application cycle. There are alternatives. If you still want to apply that year, there are definitely ways around it. And I've put some videos out on my YouTube channel of what to do if you get a low Ucat score, or not a Ucat score that you weren't hoping for. But if you're applying to somewhere with a high Ucat demand, then I would say you can. And lots of my students have delayed with a week to go. They've postponed it a bit because they don't quite feel ready. But there is a bit of an element of, sometimes you just have to grit your teeth and just really dig deep and go for it, because it will be a stressful couple of weeks in the run up to it. Medicine is stressful. Dentistry is stressful. They're stressful careers. So, you do kind of have to sometimes just dig deep and get through it. But like I say, with people on our program, if you guys are on the program and you're struggling, we always are here to help you. And those 2 weeks, we understand that it can be really difficult. So always reach out to me, and that I'll be here to support you. For those of you, Josh and Daisy, who were with us last year, they know that I'm always available to reach out to, or whatever it is. I'm here, or one of the team will be here to support you in whatever way we can. So before I hand over to Josh, so we're going to do questions at the end. Just finally, did anyone share any insights from that little bit of breakout rooming? Did anyone was that useful? Put yes or no in the chat if they found that it was useful. Some people are split when it comes to breakout rooms. Some people hate it. Some people say it's their favorite thing. So apologies for those who hate it, but it is really useful for a lot of people. So yes, they found it useful. Who found something, who just from chatting to somebody else discovered something, maybe they want to share it in the chat, you can unmute and talk about it. What's a little bit that they got from somebody else that they spoke to that they think actually would benefit everybody, that they hadn't thought about before, or maybe we haven't discussed already? If you want to unmute, if you want to put it in the chat, feel free to do that. Anybody want to unmute and share a pearl of wisdom that they got? Okay. Ali, what did you guys discuss? What did you find that was useful?
I was talking with Hamilo, I think. I'm not sure. I can't remember the name. Sorry.
That's okay.
So basically, so she was a graduate student, and she was basically applying to medicine, not the same stage as me because I'm year 12. So she was saying that she has her Ucat coming up in 2 weeks. So she said that she hasn't done the mocks yet, but she did the mini mocks, and she said that she's going for the hope to get the average of 700. And I said that my exam is in 19th of August, which is in 48 days, actually 48 days. So I just started with decision making. I didn't want to start with verbal reasoning because that's the hardest chapter, and especially for me, which is my second language, English, I didn't want to start with the hardest chapter. So I'm just watching all your videos in the FutureDoc one-to-one program. And I also talked with my tutor, Adivali, how I have to monitor my progress for the Ucat. So I just have a tracking score sheet that I put my score on that. So, well,
Cool.
I'm just going for the hope to get the 2900, the minimum.
Yeah. Don't worry. We'll keep you on track for that. So that's fine. Perfect. Good. So, and then Mohammed, thank you very much. He's put some help for mental maths. So a resource there that he's found useful. So that's really good as well. So I'm literally going to hand over to Josh in 2 seconds, but just quickly wanted to share the final little bit. So we talked about resources. So free stuff, like I say, Ucat website, get some mocks on there, some practice questions on there. Other YouTube channels exist as well, but I would say that, I mean, a lot of the YouTube channels out there are of med school students telling you what their life of med school is like. My YouTube channel is purely how to get into med school. You won't find out what I eat for breakfast. I mean, you can ask me what I eat for breakfast. It's not that interesting. But it is not about anything other than how to get into medical school. So the YouTube and dental school as well. So the YouTube channel is super focused. So that is a good. You'll get some good quality free resources there. Last week when we did 2 weeks ago when we did the free mock, I gave a discount to my for my Ucat course for the first 20 people that signed up. So actually what I've done is reinitiated that. It literally sold out within a few hours. So what I'm going to do is pop a link now in the chat for a 15% discount to that course. It's the first, like I said, the first 20 people that do it. So I'll pop that in there now. If you want to get access to that for 15% off, I'd recommend that you do it right away because, like I say, it will sell out within a couple of hours. And then so I've got a couple of places become available. So every few days or weeks we have people graduate from the FutureDoc program. So we've had a few late confirmations of offers. So we've actually had a few places free up over the last week. So let me just am I sharing screen at the moment? I'm not. So if you guys want to apply to get some one-on-one help, I'll pop the link in the chat here. It's application only. To get through it, you have to pass the application, the initial application, and then you have to have an interview with me. And if you're successful with that, I can offer you a place, and then we can talk about all that sort of stuff. So, price and everything we'll talk about on the interview when you sign up. So, so that is those are the two links if you want to do that. Like I say, I've got something like, I think I had 3 more places become available this week. So if you want to apply to that, please do so and book your interview soon before those places fill up. So without further ado, let me hand over to Josh. So Josh, I'll let him introduce himself, but Josh is a graduate entry applicant. Josh he'll tell you exactly what his circumstances were, but he works as a paramedic, so was doing the program along a full-time job, working night shifts and all the sorts of fun that comes with being a paramedic. And because weirdly grad is always complicated and annoying, and also very shrouded in mystery. But Josh had a very narrow window as to where he could apply. He literally, I don't think he even could fill the 4 places. I think am I right in thinking, Josh, you only
Yeah.
had 3?
So I had
three
universities,
yeah,
but 4 courses.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So just about filled his quota of 4 spots to apply to. So Newcastle was one of them, which is alongside King's College is and remember, for grad it's just ridiculous, the level of the score required to get in. But I think Newcastle and King's notoriously have the highest requirement. I think for your year, was it 2,950? They wouldn't look at any applications below that score.
That was the year before. I don't know what it was this year. They haven't released that yet.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry for the latest data anyway. So yeah, Josh had a very tough task on his hands, but well, no surprise, the clue's in the title of the talk. But yeah, I'll hand over to him and let you tell you about his story, and also particularly what advice you can implement to get a similar score to him.
Hi, yeah, I'm Josh. As Ash says, I'm a paramedic. I work in London. I applied to medicine. It was a bit of a coincidence. I wanted to be a doctor when I was a kid, but unfortunately, when I was doing my A-levels, my dad got very unwell. I was not in a good place. My results weren't good. Took a year out. Ended up applying to be a paramedic. So I went and did a foundation degree, which is just below a bachelor's. Been a paramedic for a few years, and then my partner was applying to the FutureDoc program, and persuaded me to have a chat with Ash as well. And at the end of the interview, Ash was like, "Yeah, you're going to be a great doctor." I was like, "I don't think that's true, but okay." And now I'm going to med school. So he was right. Don't tell him I said that. Basically, my A-levels weren't good. I didn't have a bachelor's degree, which meant graduate entry was very small. I emailed all 44 med schools in the country, and 3 of them said I could apply. 2 of them wanted the GAMSAT, and Newcastle wanted the Ucat. So I sat down with my tutor and Ash, and we came up with a study regime. So I did a month of Ucat, which was very casual. It was just getting used to the questions and stuff. Then I did 3 months of GAMSAT. If you're doing the GAMSAT, I'm sorry, it's not a pleasant exam. If you think the Ucat's bad,
No, it's not.
It's pretty horrific. And then after that, I had 6 weeks. So I sat the GAMSAT at the end of my 3 months, and then I had 6 weeks of proper Ucat revision before I did the Ucat. I've put together a list of tips and things for another student. So apologies, I'm looking at my iPad. I'm not ignoring you, I promise. But I'll go through each section just like Daisy did. To answer Athra's question, I gave myself 2 hours a day, 2 hours each side of a day that I was off. So I had 2-hour revisions in the morning, 2-hour revision in the afternoon, followed by recapping whatever I'd revised, with mocks at least twice a week. If I was on shift, I would do 2 hours in the evening if it was a day shift, or 2 hours before shift if it was a night shift. I hope that's an acceptable mark. So the verbal reasoning, one thing that I really struggled with, because I didn't like it either. I love reading, but I can't read quickly, and I really hate skim reading. I really recommend just reading, not necessarily small chunks in the verbal reasoning section, but go out and read anything. So read newspapers, read books, read non-fiction, fiction. Really good thing to do is read medical journals. Just try and read things as fast as you can, and your reading ability will get better. And what that means is that you'll be able to retain information a lot more than just skimming and looking for keywords. So you can recognize the information, and that's fine. Whilst you're looking at it, you know what it is, but retaining that information for future questions is a much harder skill to develop. And for me, there were 3 things that I did for the verbal reasoning that worked quite well. So variety of what I was reading. So like I say, go through loads of different things, articles, journals, whatever you can get your hands on, basically. Repetition, don't just do it for a week and then stop. It's like any muscle group. If you don't do it for a while, it will get worse. It's like sprinting. If you don't practice for months, you will not be as good a sprinter. And then testing. Every week, I would force myself to do a verbal reasoning mock on Medify, which I really recommend. Medify's got a huge bank of questions, and in my opinion, they are the most close to the Ucat website. So test a couple of times a week, just to make sure that you are going in the right direction, because if you're not, you'll need to seek some help and try and work out what's going on there. Decision-making questions. They've got loads of different categories and loads of different types of questions. The yes/no questions in the boxes I hated and I still hate. And it was just repetition. It was just learning to make your brain work in the way that the question wants you to. This isn't a content exam. It's testing how you think and how you approach things. But for the long, like 4-option ones, for me, you can normally rule out 2 straight away. So if you read through the question, go through all the content, all the rules, or all the information they've got, read through the options, you should be able to discount 2 straight away. You should be able to look at 2 and just go, they're not right. After that, at worst, you've got a 50-50 chance if you guess. So it's about making less work for yourself. So don't go through each answer and overanalyze it. Just look at them, and 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to see 2 and say, no, it's not those 2. These 2, I will go through in detail. Save yourself half the work, and it really, those few seconds that you save will make a massive difference. Quantitative reasoning. I'm quite fortunate in that I like maths. I'm one of those weird people. And ultimately, that's what quantitative reasoning is. It is doing simple maths with slightly bigger than normal numbers in a time pressure situation. Someone mentioned earlier a really good resource for quick mental arithmetic. There's loads of apps out there, brain training apps, maths apps, all these sorts of different things. Just get them on your phone. If you're on the bus for 15 minutes, just do some mental arithmetic, build up that confidence so that you know that you've got the skill to do it quickly. Because most of my time in quantitative reasoning was spent making sure that my working out was correct. And again, it's only a few seconds, but if you take a few seconds for 20 questions, you've got a couple more minutes, and it, again, makes a big difference. I started looking at 4 things with quantitative reasoning questions. So the conclusion, which is the summary at the top. What is it talking about? What are they asking you about? What is going to be the content of the graph? Which leads us on to the next part, which is the context of the graph. So look at it. Is it a bar chart? Is it, what are they showing? What are they displaying? Axis, so you know what they're measuring. And scale. So scale is really important. It's where I lost loads of marks on quantitative reasoning when I first started out, because I would miss, it would be 10 times 10 to the 3 as opposed to just 10, and little things like that, little details on the graph that if you just glance at and you can say, okay, cool, I know what the scale is, I know what the question's asking me, all these numbers start with a 5 and they've just got different amounts of zeros afterwards. Focus on the scale because it's a minute detail. It saves you a lot of time later on. Abstract reasoning, it's odd, everyone I speak to at the moment seems to like abstract reasoning. When I was doing it, everyone hated abstract reasoning. It is just about repetition. It's about learning this set of skills. FutureDoc and Ash have done a really good talk on abstract reasoning that talks through his whole acronym of Spartan IBS. I've got to be honest, after I did the exam, I've forgotten what Spartan IBS means. I apologize. But it was really useful to have it's like with medicine. So when I practice at work, I have a stepwise approach. So I go through things logically and focus on one thing. Okay, what's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one? Spartan IBS talks you through every potential pattern in anything. And once you've got it, once it clicks, you can get easy high 800s in your abstract reading. As for the situational judgment, working for the NHS, situational judgment was probably my hardest topic, which I know sounds a bit weird because it's the most lax. It's got a lot of time, the amount of questions, the amount of time it takes, it's quite a relaxed section for most people. I see how things are actually done at work, and it's really hard to switch off from how things are done to how things should be done. But I was talking to my group and I said, not just the GMC website, but any professional body. So I am registered with the HCPC, which is the Healthcare Professionals Council. You've got the Royal College of Nursing. They've all got similar documents to that of the med school one. And they address, it's the same content, but it's just worded differently and it phrases things differently. And it might just help you if you're struggling to get to that band 2, band 1 goal. It might just help looking at it from a different perspective, because ultimately it's the same content, but reworded for different professions. That's about it, really. Annoyingly, Daisy was very efficient and has gone through most of what I was going to say. But if you've got any questions, particularly about graduate entry and stuff, please feel free to ask them. Yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, really useful. And it's nice to see that, there are patterns amongst the people who are doing well. Because, Josh is saying, oh, well, I'm repeating a lot of what Daisy said to me. That's reassuring that, the people, like I say, I find it fascinating to study the people who've really excelled in this exam, because there are recurrent themes, and that is why we take those traits or those things that we see and make them part of our program as to how we absolutely drill people to be UCAT machines. So yeah, let's open the
quickly
floor.
say one thing.
Oh yeah, of course. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I don't want to be a salesman or pitch anything, but the FutureDoc program has got fantastic resources for the UCAT. They've got loads of experts that come in. They've got people who have done extremely well, like gotten 100% on certain sections on the UCAT, to come in and talk through their skills. Most of what I've talked about is very condensed for the time frame that we've got, from these people that I've heard whilst I was on the FutureDoc program. And if you're thinking about it, really recommend just having an interview and have a chat, go through the application, because if it's not for you, fair enough, but I highly recommend it. It's the reason I am now going to med school, is because of FutureDoc. Might have gotten there a few years down the line, but it's massively sped up my program. So not a sales pitch, but highly recommend going to just have a chat, see how it goes. It could make a massive difference.
Cool. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, like Josh says, we've got the nerd army that we deploy on our sessions, and who are very good at that specific section particularly, and they will teach you what they did to absolutely smash it. So yeah, right, well, let's do, I think we'll allow, I don't know, we'll probably allow 10 minutes for questions. So does anyone, I'll go through the chat questions, but does anyone want to unmute and show your lovely faces? It's always a bit nicer to have a chat than to just read questions. Anyone want to, I'll open the floor now for people who want to unmute and are feeling brave to ask some questions that way.
I've had a couple in the chat.
Yeah, go for it,
That's
Josh.
right.
Question for Josh. Yes, I'll just read it out just for the benefit of anyone who's watching the recording. How did you balance studying for the UCAT and working full time? Did you take time off from work?
No, I didn't. I think if you're taking that much time, I think it's going to be inefficient. The UCAT is like an exercise. If you can't do 5 hours revision, it's not a content exam. It's testing the way you think and the way your brain works. So I didn't take time off work. I did shift work, which is probably quite good for the UCAT, because I have 12-hour shifts. I work less days. But even when I was working, my focus for those 6 weeks was the UCAT. I didn't go out. I didn't, my social life took a hit. I wasn't doing nearly as much outside of prep and UCAT, but that's a sacrifice that I had to make personally, because I knew I had to get that high score. Balancing it, once after the first couple of weeks, it became almost, this is going to sound weird, but almost therapy doing UCAT prep. It was a formula. It became very natural. It was becoming a part of my routine. So I would come in from work, I would have dinner, I would work for 2 hours, I would watch an episode of Game of Thrones, and I'd go to bed. And that was my life for whilst I was doing the UCAT. If I wasn't off, I would do a 2-hour mock in the morning, go through my questions, have a few hours off, and then mid-afternoon I'd do another 2 hours of questions, go through them, and then I'd have the evening to myself. It's, for me, wasn't about beasting 8 hours. To put it in perspective, my partner, my fiance, she'll kill me if I say partner now. Jess, she is also on the FutureDoc program. She got a very good score in the UCAT. It just, because she's an international student, it was a much higher threshold. She was doing solid 6-hour days, and I was saying to her, this isn't a good idea, because you can't physically sort of train your brain that way. And she got a really good score, but not as nearly as high as she wanted. This year, she's gone, okay, I'll take your advice. I'll do it in small bursts. Her score has skyrocketed. You don't need to do massive bulks of revision. You need to revise sensibly and smartly, because if you're just going to burn yourself out after 5 hours, you're not going to be able to work properly for 2 days. And that's taking you off 2 days. Whereas if you do a few hours in the morning, a couple of hours in the afternoon, you're really managing the time a lot better.
Cool.
Can I just add something there?
Yeah, go for it, Daisy.
Putting it into perspective, like you say, my day consisted of majority everything but the UCAT actually. So as I said, I sat my mock every day at 2. But apart from that mock and apart from the reviewing, most of the day I'd get up at whenever I wanted. If I wanted to, I'd have a line. I'd get up at 11. I'd go out. I'd see my friends who do other things. You don't just add in. Don't spend the whole day doing UCAT. You will burn yourself out. I know I said that when it came up to it, I did start doing 2 mocks a day. But even then, you do 2 hours in the morning and half an hour reviewing or whatever. Put it down. Do something else for the rest of the day. Come back at 2, do it, and then I had the whole evening off. I do whatever I want in the evening. I don't sit there for 8 hours. Otherwise, you'd get so tired. You can't do that. You'll burn out.
And in fact, good advice for you guys to heed when you start medical school. I did this, and medical school is a content exam, actually, so it isn't like the UCAT. But good advice for medical school is when you're studying, just preserve the asset, which is you and your mind. I did that in medical school. I'd literally do ridiculous hours of practice. And actually, when it got to the exam, I was so knackered that I was making silly mistakes. So all the knowledge that I gained from staying up and, into the early hours of the morning, revising, actually were counterproductive, because then you'd go and make a stupid mistake on stuff that you did know. So yeah, good advice generally is keep yourself healthy for exams. I don't think there's ever an argument for burning out. It is counterproductive 100%. So another question. So someone, I won't say who because they messaged me privately, but I have 40 days before my UCAT exam, 2 of which will still be in school. If I do 2 hours a day for 2 weeks and increase the time I prepare to 4 hours a day for the remaining 2 weeks, will that be sufficient to get a good score? So essentially, start with 2 hours a day, up it to 4 hours a day in the last 2 weeks. Now, in theory, that is a good way to think about it. But you have to be adaptable. It's not about it's not a math equation, a maths equation. It's not like if this plus this equals this. Yes, it's it's likely that you'll start doing well from that. But this is where you have to get a bit of tactile feedback from yourself. You have to be adaptable. This is where your mocks come in, and you go, right, I'll do a mock. Oh, sugar, I'm getting 2,600, which isn't bad, and you'll still get into some medical schools with that. But, I'm aiming for a 2,900. Right, I need to do a little bit more. And again, what we were saying, it might be about the number of stints that you do, rather than upping the hours in one session, upping the sessions and the breaks in between. So if you do 2 hours of revision, I would recommend at least a 2-hour break. So yeah, you have to, this is where it kind of comes into knowing yourself a little bit and what works for you. And again, this is where we offer support with that sort of thing, where we're like, okay, dial it up a bit, dial it down a little bit, try this, try that. So yeah, it's very hard to say formulaically do this or do that. So that person who messaged me, they're on the program, so don't worry, we'll look after you. So I have a question for Josh. We've answered that one. At what stage during the year 12 or 13 do you recommend joining FutureDoc? So both Daisy and Josh joined in March sort of time, didn't you? And I would recommend joining, really, I'd say, I mean, they did fine. I would say probably joining a little bit sooner than that is better, because if you've seen my video on the 4 stages of med school application, there's I'd break it into 4 phases, which phase 1 is all about the preparatory work, which is basically lining yourself up to do everything that you need to kind of build a strong application. Then we shift focus to other stuff later on. I think I've always said a year of preparation in the build up to, so you start, let's say you wanted to start medical school in 2025. So September 2025, you submit your application for that in September 2024. I would say starting your preparation September 2023 at least. Now that, I mean, we have people who join us to do all of that, and I think that works really well. But for some people, they might want to join a little bit later. That's also possible. But yeah, I think a year before you submit your application is good, and then people tend to stay with us until after they get their offer, which is usually, well, depending on the time of year, kind of halfway through, a quarter of the way through into the following year. So let's have a look. Medify versus MedEntry. Anyone, any of you guys have any advice of Medify versus MedEntry? I think people generally feel that Medify is good.
I used Medify. I didn't use MedEntry. I seem to remember doing like a mock on MedEntry, and I didn't find it as realistic. I think Medify is just like an easier one. Maybe MedEntry is cheaper. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I've just heard better things about Medify.
these days the kind of feedback that I get is that Medify is great for the first 4 sections. SJT is maybe the one where it's least representative, but yeah, still quite good. I think a lot of the people who said going through, so for those of you who have got access to the module, doing the SJT module the night before and that SJT summary video on YouTube, those are the best ones that people have messaged me saying they did the night before the SJT and got them feeling pretty good about it and got them to get a band 1, which is ultimately what matters. So yeah, Josh, any thoughts about the resources? I think we've all kind of unanimously said that Medify.
I mean, if you're getting through all the questions on Medify, you're probably overworking yourself. Like I say, there's like 20,000 questions on there, and you will find that you skew more towards the subjects that you struggle with. I think, in my experience, like all the books, all the other websites that I was part of, Medify was the most accurate representation of the actual Ucat, and because they've got so many questions available to them, I didn't feel the need to go anywhere else personally.
But can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, of course, go for it, Ali.
Oh yeah, one of the problems that I have is basically, every single day that I try to do the 2 hours practice question on the Medify for Ucat, as well as I've got my A-level revision, and I've got to go to my work experience probably in the summer. So the problem that I have is I don't really get any time to just chill. That's like, look, I have to go through your website to watch all the videos for FutureDoc, and then go to the Ucat to practice questions and then my A-level revision, and or most likely my work experience would be in summer. So you know what? I don't have any time. Literally, I don't have any time left to just chill and just have my social life, and I just keep on just sitting down on my desk, just going to do my A-level revision, then UCAT revision, then just watching some of the videos for personal statement, editing my personal statement, and then UCAT revision again. Somehow I don't get any time left.
Welcome
That's
to
the problem.
welcome to the busiest summer of your life. No, this summer is going to be busy for anyone applying to medical school. It is that way, unfortunately. The whole, you guys who are on the program know that we do a strategy call to get you organized to make this as smooth as possible. What we don't want, and what people who come to me very late on in the process, they've left everything to pile up with the last 2 weeks to go, and that's really stressful. So you're on course, Ali, don't worry. I mean, yes, it's every bit of the summer will be busy and you've got a lot to think about. That's natural, and like I say, we're always here to help with that sort of thing. I mean, in terms of getting some chill out time, I would say that if you're very organized, you can have the UCAT out of the way, or have the UCAT after your work experience. Do your work experience. That will actually be quite enjoyable. I mean, it will be a 9-to-5 job sort of thing. You'll be going and being a professional fly on the wall, but it still is. It's a nice experience. You're learning. You're seeing a lot of exciting stuff. So that will not be so much of a stress. Like I always say for people, try and get your personal statement ticking along, because it's more about once you've got the first few drafts, and as you know, we help you make sure it's on point. So a lot of it will be waiting for people to review it and all that sort of stuff. So once you've got the crux of your personal statement, and again, for those of you who are new or haven't been, remember that personal statement workshop that I did, which will teach you exactly how to go about writing a solid personal statement. Watch that session, and that'll get you most of the way there. Get your first draft in, teach you to get it reviewed, and that's going to be the bottleneck, is getting eyes on your personal statement. And then hopefully the idea is that you've got all of that stuff sorted before school starts, and give yourself a week to chill out, because it is important, as we said, restful time is important. We need to keep you relaxed. But this is, as I said, in those, that video I was talking about, the 4 phases, we're now in phase 2, which is all the exams. Phase 3 is crunch time, which is, that September to October period is hectic. So yeah, give yourself a little, if you're organized and get everything compartmentalized and out of the way, you'll make it as relaxed as possible. And that will also factor in some time to just forget about it for a week once you've done all of the stuff that's important to get out of the way. So yeah. But no, don't worry. You're on it, Ali. So don't worry. I'm not concerned about you.
Thank you.
So just a private message. Hi, Dr. Ash. My story is similar to Josh. I have very narrow window as well. My application is very complicated, and I'm a mature home student, graduate, but I couldn't afford the academy. I'll have signed up for the elite. That's fine. Will I still have sufficient help? No. Okay. Yes, of course you will. Yeah. Josh, how do you feel in terms of your specific situation? How do you feel that the program, the FutureDoc program, could help you kind of manage your specific situation?
So for me, it was, oh man, how long is a piece of string? There's loads of things about the application to med school that I hadn't considered prior to joining the program, purely because it was it ramped up very quickly for me. It was like, I might apply to med school. And then I had a meeting with Ash, and suddenly I was, okay, cool, I'm applying to med school. And there was no real sort of buffer for that. For me, it was having a one-on-one meeting like once a month with Charlie. It set out, she helped me set out goals and markers, and okay, how much time have you got this month? What are you going to work on? When are you going to work on it? And it was almost like having a carer in a way, someone that can sort of guide you through each step of the process, because when you're working, when you've got loads of other commitments, it does sometimes take the back burner, and it's not easy to get yourself back into that regime. And if you've got someone there going, cool, you said you're going to work on this, have you worked on this? You're like, oh yeah, I've got to do that by this point. So a time management perspective, from people who have gone through the process, it was really handy having that knowledge of, you need to have this done by this date and this done by this date, and don't worry about this. Things that you might overthink or worry about, they're like, oh no, don't worry about that, we can sort that out at a later date. Like, this should be your focus now. This is what you need to work on at this point. We can worry about the rest of it later. And just things like Ash said, once you've done a first draft of your personal statement, getting the first draft done is the hardest part. Once you've done that, you can get the ball rolling really quickly, and you don't have to spend so much time focusing on it, because it's being reviewed, and the more drafts you do, the easier it gets. Things like that. It just takes a lot of the pressure off for management, and as opposed to actual approach. Does that make sense? Just sort of rambling at that.
No, absolutely. And that's the point, is that it's adaptable. And people it's amazing me what people put their energy into and focus on at certain times, when they should be putting their energy completely in something else. And it's good to help people focus like that. So Nihal's put, any recommendations of medical books to extend my reading? Oh God, where do you start? So Adam Kay's book, I've actually never read it, but everyone says that Adam Kay's book's really good. This is going to hurt. I think for doctors, it's a bit it's a bit eye-opening for lay people, but I think for doctors it's a bit like, yeah, it's pretty standard what it's like. So it's good, I think, for opening people's eyes as to the realities of medicine. But yeah, it's also a very inspiring book in a lot of ways. I absolutely love a guy called Ben Goldacre. There's a book called Bad Science and another one called Bad Pharma, which I think gives really increases your improves your BS detector, because I feel very smug after reading his books because I feel like I'm smarter than most of the doctors when I read that. But obviously, I'm just being slightly facetious saying that. But yeah, I think in there he imparts knowledge about like studies and pharmacological pharmacological marketing that actually helps you know when people are trying to catch you out. And I think it's knowledge that even some doctors don't have all of it and know all the tricks that people are trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. So that's a really good book I would recommend. Let's
Sorry,
see.
just whilst we're talking about books, one thing I think is worth doing is not just focusing on very sort of popular, famous books by doctors about med school or about the career as a doctor. There's some really good, interesting topics about very niche aspects of medicine. And it just, in an interview, would come across, if you're talking about things that you've read or experiences that you've had, the more broad you can draw, the more broad range of topics you can draw from, the better. So the really good things, there's like a book called Cairngorm John, who's I think he's a paramedic that became a doctor, and it's about mountain medicine, things like that, unusual topics that, because if you're sat in interviews all day and people are saying the same thing, the same books, if you suddenly hear someone say something different, it just puts you slightly above.
Cool. Yeah, I think mixing it up, and you can imagine how an interviewer who's had 10 people come through and talk about Adam Kay for the 10th time might actually find it quite refreshing to see something different. We've had a few, so Daisy's talked about this, but we'll reiterate. So Amber and Mohammed have kind of talked about the cadence of the mocks going into it. So frequency, how often, how many to do. So Daisy, just reiterate maybe how you spaced out the mocks. Remember, Medify actually have a load of mocks. I think they've got like, they've upped it to like 20 maybe now. I don't know how many they've got at the moment. I can't remember.
I think it's 22 full mocks at the moment, and they've got at least 10 mocks for each individual section. Great.
Okay, so Daisy, do you want to talk a little bit about how you kind of tailored your mocks in the, maybe when you were a few weeks out? I always think do one, like that's why we hosted a mock Ucat test a couple of weeks ago, because I want people to have a barometer of where they are now, but also to have your eyes open to how bloody fast it is. It is pacey when you do it for real, and you need to be aware of that now, so that you don't find that out a week before the exam and be like, oh shoot, I've got a lot to do. So that's why I say do one kind of as you're entering stage 2 of that 3-stage preparation I said, just to give you an idea. But then Daisy, when you're getting towards the end, why don't you tell us a little bit about like I say, the spacing of the mocks? And I'm going to get a glass of water while you're doing that.
Yeah, so as I said, I gave myself 5 weeks, however long you want to give yourself. At the beginning, so sort of the first like couple of weeks, I maybe was doing like 1 mock every few days. I think I did quite a lot of the like mini mocks, or the mocks, as Josh said, like for the little sections. I did quite a lot of them just to sort of get a grasp for the questions, not so much for the mock, for the exam as like a bigger picture. So I was doing quite a lot of them. So that was for like the first couple of weeks, and then I sort of ramped up. I maybe did like 1 mock a day for 2 weeks, and then for sort of my last week, that's when I sort of really ramped it up. I know that a lot of people are busy, so they can't do like 2 mocks a day, but if you can, like, I mean, if you don't burn yourself out, but that's what I did, and I was fine with it. I also, funnily enough, I just want to add, I actually moved my exam forward by a few days. And I did that because I was sort of, being honest, I was getting fed up with the Ucat. I didn't want to do any more revision by this point. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to move it. I moved it forward by like, it was only 2 or 3 days, but for me, that was fine because I felt ready. I was at my peak. And if that's how you feel, that's completely fine. I was up to doing like 2 mocks a day. and review, which did take up quite a lot of my time. So I felt ready and I did that. By the end, I wasn't doing as many of like the mini mocks. I wasn't doing as many of the practice like individual questions. I preferred to do a mock as a chunk, like just a full mock, because it kind of gets you used to like the time pressure. The mini mocks I found, I can't remember if I found them quite representative, because the difference is you're only doing that, so it's sort of like you're not tired, you're not feeling the whole of the mock, you're only feeling that one section. So by the end I didn't really do as much as them. Someone just asked, how did I start my prep? Well, my teacher, my biology teacher was also did Ucat, so I started with him, and that was like once a week. But in terms of my revision at home, I started the 5 weeks before my exam. I planned it out. I did a mock on the day that I sort of started. I got, however, I think I got like 2,300 or something. And then I worked it out from there. And I was like, okay, so I need to do this much per day. Yeah, sorry, while I'm talking, I saw someone say about SJT. Was the SJT harder or more easier than Medify? I can't remember how I found it. What about you, Josh? I seem to think it was kind of on par. I got band 2.
My SJT was on par, but my fiance did the exam the same day, and they just give you they don't give you the same questions, they just draw from a massive bank of questions, and her one was much easier than the Medify ones. There is a slight bit of luck there, depending on what questions fall for you. I found it pretty accurate. The ones that I'd done for Medify were very similar to the ones that I had in my actual Ucat, whereas my fiance had much easier questions in her actual Ucat. But then I've heard people say that they was much harder. So there's not really a clear answer for that, I'm afraid.
Cool. Okay, let's move on, because I'm going to try and get through as many questions as possible. We're coming up to 2 hours now, so I'm sure everyone's pretty tired. So let's see. Questions. So we talked about is the SJT harder or easier in the real Ucat compared to Medify? So I found feedback lately has been SJT has been harder on the real thing. So maybe just use the official ones for that. Do you guys agree with that? Did you find any discrepancy between the test and the Medify practice?
I mean, we just spoke about the SJT, but with everything else, I seem to remember finding verbal reasoning easier. I did really bad on Medify, and I did quite bad throughout the whole thing until the exam. I don't know if it was luck. I remember getting a lot of really, really weird passages on Medify, but then I was quite all right in the Ucat. Abstract reasoning I found easier in the Ucat, but then again, that could just be because I did so much practice on it that by the time I got to it, I found it easier. Decision making I found harder. I remember doing really well on Medify, but I found it quite difficult in the exam. Quantitative, sort of on par. There are a lot of the one thing I will say on Medify, I found that the questions that were hard, like the kind of like impossible questions to answer on the quantitative, they really were impossible. In the exam, I tend to find that if they're the technical impossible questions, you can still try and answer them in the time if you have the time at the end. But in Medify, I had no time. They really were possible.
And that's one thing for those who for those on the program, just have a look at those videos about impossible questions and when to just be like, pass. Cool. So let's do that.
Quite a good question that's been directed to me, Ash, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So someone's asking about graduate entry medicine. So the Ucat range for me was a minimum of 2950. I think it was slightly higher this year because I was talking to the interviewer afterwards and they were saying that they had more applicants than normal. So the 3 universities I applied for were Newcastle, Exeter and Plymouth. Exeter and Plymouth are both GAMSAT universities. I didn't enjoy the GAMSAT. It was not a pleasant exam. And it pretty, oh man, that was that. If you think the Ucat's long, sitting in an exam room for 6 hours doing the GAMSAT is not my idea of fun. The main reason they do that is because there's a lot of applicants. So once you get past that, they will read through your application. And if you get invited to interview, your interview stage is supposed to be a little bit more easier. Not at all intimidating, talking to a panel of doctors. But yeah, so so they also ask, as someone who didn't do so well in their A-levels, how did it affect me? Ultimately, it didn't. I've been a paramedic for 8 years. I don't like to be cocky or arrogant, but I am a good paramedic. I'm a good clinician. I enjoy work, sort of treating my patients. And for me, my experience as a paramedic is what the university was looking for. Newcastle doesn't really care about your exam results. It's focused on your experience. The accelerated course for Newcastle is for healthcare professionals. They just want to know that you are a competent clinician. And for me, that was a much better morale booster than having good A-level results, or in my case, bad A-level results.
Yeah, Gen medicine is so bloody complicated. Actually, if you look at one of the YouTube videos I did, you can get a free guide to each course and kind of how to think about each one and whether you're eligible. Generally, if you're applying as a GEM to a 5-year, then they look at your A-levels. Generally, they don't if you have a good degree level and good experience and a good GAMSAT or UCAT score. For those on the program, remember that on Monday we started the introductory session yesterday, but on Monday we're starting our intensive GAMSAT 8:30 on every Monday now. So intensive GAMSAT training starting as of Monday. Cool. So I'm just kind of working through these. Okay. I'm delighted to have come across the program. Oh, thank you. That's very kind, Zara. Do you provide help with personal statement? Of course. Yeah. We talked about that earlier, how we do the workshops and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, lots of help with that. And you can find out more about how we help on that. So another question is, do we have disabled doctors? Now, in terms of disability, what universities will look at is, and the GMC will look at is, are you able to care for patients? So without going too much into the details of what the disability is, they can make accommodations for people with disabilities to apply to medical school if you're still able to provide care for others. So that's the kind of benchmark. So normally I would call the universities themselves, explain fully what your disability is, and then maybe speak to them as to what their policy is for that specific disability. So some thank yous. Okay, so just asking about for applications to the one-on-one program. Yeah, just prepare some questions. So wait up for the interview, just prepare some questions, some answers to why you want to study medicine and why you want to be on the program and kind of what your ambitions are. And we will talk about that on the interview. Hi, I just want to ask 2 months. 2 months is a reasonable UCAT prep for the person asking. Yes, it's fine. We talked about timelines. It's very personal. It's very variable. And 2 months is good for most people. Okay, so someone's recommended a book, 34 Patients by Tom Templeton. What was the book Josh mentioned again?
Ken Gordon John.
Oh, sorry, yeah, you've written it.
I thought I'd panic.
Sorry, I'm slowly working through.
Some random
So, okay, and final thing was talking about, I think we'll call this the last question now. Sorry, Athra was asking, can we do a weekly UCAT mock? Okay, yeah, for members, I'll maybe not weekly, but we'll do regular mocks. I'll set up some regular mocks to do for our members. That's fine, no problem. So finally, quick question about the calculator. Shuri, do you want to? So can you talk a bit more about the calculator? Do you want to be a bit more specific about what, if you want to unmute and talk about it, ask us a question as to what specifically it is, because can you just talk more about the calculator? You've asked.
Hi.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So is the calculator like another tab on the screen?
I'll let Josh and Daisy take that one.
The calculator, from what I remember, you just like click the calculator tab and it will like pop up, but it's like in the corner of your screen, so you don't have to go onto another thing to get the calculator. It will be there, so you can all see your question and the calculator in the corner. It's one of those ones where if you want to like go up and click, you have to drag the mouse and click all the buttons, and it takes ages. Or you can work out how to use your keyboard.
There's
quite
a lot
quickly.
of
There's a lot of like
there's loads of shortcuts and things.
Yeah, there's a lot of shortcuts. I don't know them, but
it's really counterintuitive though. It takes a while to get
Yeah.
used to. So Medify, like Ash said earlier, the Medify calculator that they use is, I don't know about Daisy, but it was very, very similar.
it's like
for me.
it's basically the same thing.
The same software by the looks of it. But there's loads of shortcuts and things that you can do to make it, like, again, saving those little seconds. But it's just taking practice and going over it and using it loads just to get used to it.
Perfect. Yeah, I think shortcuts, like they say, shortcuts is the key. And you do have paper to calculate things. Well, it's not paper, it's a board. So yeah, you do have that as well to calculate. So you can use that, but I think the calculator is better. Just get really efficient at using the keyboard. And yes, it is a tab that opens up separately. And what was I going to say? You can just input the numbers, and it's something that you want to kind of limit your use of. If you can not, there are times where you have to use the calculator, unless you're Rain Man, you just won't be able to work it out. But generally, when you can avoid using the calculator, do so. Cool. All right. Can you? You type the numbers in. You type and just generally try and learn all the shortcuts. And the Ucat website or the Pearson VUE website allows you to practice it exactly how it will be in the test. So do that. So, all right, let's wrap it up there because we've been here for a marathon session. Ironically, the length of time that the Ucat is 2 hours. Not by design. It was only meant to be an hour, but I think you had some really good questions. And Josh and Daisy have been absolutely fantastic. So thank you for answering so well. What I'm going to do is just post one last time in the chat. If you want to, I think we've got 5 spots left on that Ucat course that have come through. Literally just, you've heard my email pinging of people signing up to the Ucat course. So if you want that discount, I would recommend doing that in the next hour because, the spots are selling out. I might reinitiate it when we pop. So for people who are watching the recording, I'll put it on YouTube in a couple of weeks, probably. So for those who want to, for members, I'll put it up straight away. But I'll put it on YouTube in a couple of weeks, and I'll probably reinitiate the discount for that. If you want to apply, I've had a few applications come through whilst we've been on the call. So just like I say, spots are filling up fast. So just submit your application to that and book your interview whenever you get a chance. Okay. So Athra, will do one last question and then we'll wrap it up there.
Yes, sorry. If Jason and Daisy feel comfortable, is there a way for us to reach them out? Because the situation is very similar to Josh's.
Yeah, just reach out to me, Athra, and I'll take care of that. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much.
We can do that for members. That's no problem. Cool. Okay, lovely. Well, could I get everybody? I know it's been a long session. Everyone's a bit tired, but could I please get everybody to show your appreciation to Daisy and Josh? Please, in the chat, just go crazy, smash your keyboards. You can put reactions. I'm going to put a thumbs up and I'm going to put a clap because they were amazing. If you want to unmute and do a audible clap, you're welcome to do that as well. But just big thank you to Josh and Daisy for coming today and sharing their expertise. And thank you for all attending today. It was really, I hope you found it really useful. Like I say, I'll share the recording very soon. And I'll hope you have a really nice weekend, and the weather's nice where you are. It's nice in London. So hope you enjoy that. So thanks everybody, and take care. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Good luck, guys. All the best.
Thank you.